an election broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party.
Good evening. In our campaign report from the operations room this evening, Christopher Mayhew will be dealing with the subject of schools. Woodrow Wyatt has gone to Birmingham to talk to Hugh Gaitskell, and we shall be going over there later. But first, homes. Anthony Greenwood has been out to see for himself, and here is his report from Newcastle.
Elswick East Terrace lies just off the Scotswood Road, which was made famous in the song The Blaydon Races. But it must be pretty difficult to have a song in your heart if you live in that part of Newcastle. Take a look at the house where Mr. and Mrs. Lenny live, with their two small children. Nobody ought to have to live in conditions like these, struggling against the dirt and the damp and the dreariness of the area. They've 2 rooms with a miserable broken-down outdoor lavatory. And as a playground, there are the dustbins where the cats scrabble among the rubbish, and the children try to keep out of mischief. There's a sordid bit of waste ground, too. Not even an angel child could help getting dirty in these sort of surroundings. And while the children are playing, Mrs. Lenny has to get ready to wash them when they come in. That's not too easy, because there's only one tap in the house and no hot water. And every mother knows what a difference it makes to have plenty of hot water available whenever she needs it. These houses have been condemned for years, but it costs the Lennys 14 and 9p rent every week. There's no electricity, and in spite of all these disadvantages, they had to take it 3 months before they needed it to be sure of getting it. Here they come, the children, hand in hand, up the worn stone steps with no guardrail at the side to keep them safe. Every time it's an arduous and difficult adventure. There's not much privacy in these sort of conditions. Because there's only one bedroom, it is to be shared by Mr. and Mrs. Lenny and both their children. That's bad for the parents, and it's bad for the children too. They're lovely children, and lovely children ought to have lovely surroundings to grow up in. However much tenants do, there's not much they can do to improve these battered, obsolete houses without sanitation in miserable, heartbreaking, derelict areas. But because of the government's policy, the Lennys can't have a new home for another 3 years. And yet, you know, they're only one family among tens of thousands in a more or less similar position. And there are millions of people still living under housing conditions which most of us wouldn't tolerate for a moment.
Anthony Greenwood is now in Manchester waiting to answer some questions.
Let's start, Tony, with bathrooms and lavatories.
Well, there are millions of houses, of course, that need bathrooms and lavatories and proper hot water systems. And we believe that the job is much too big for private landlords to tackle. That's why we say that with reasonable exceptions, the council should take over rented houses and modernize them and bring them up to date. And when a council takes over a house, the sitting tenant will be given a chance to buy it if he wants to do so.
Tony, the Tories are repeating their assurances that they're not going to extend rent decontrol.
Well, I don't believe them for a moment. They promised in the last election that they wouldn't decontrol rents, and they broke their promise when they introduced the Rent Act. And there are 2 things, you know, that we ought to remember about the Rent Act. The first is that the Minister of Housing and Local Government can decontrol another batch of houses whenever he wants. And the other point is that when there's a change of tenancy, a house becomes decontrolled. So unless there's a Labour government, never again will anybody have a chance to move into a house with a controlled rent.
Will you say something about home ownership?
Well, we want everybody to own their home if they want to do so. And we shall help them in 3 ways. First of all, by providing 100% mortgages to those in housing need. Secondly, by making the money available at reasonable rates of interest. And also, we shall give leaseholders with long leases
an opportunity to buy the freehold of their property.
Thanks very much.
Britain is covered with posters saying life is better under the Conservatives. And of course, for some people, it is. So tonight, we are turning to Vicky of the Evening Standard again to show us who they are. And now we'd like you to meet some of the millions of people who are supporting us in this election. We put the same question to each of them. Why are you voting Labour? First, Father Trevor Huddleston.
The most important single issue confronting our generation is the improvement of race relations. That means the breaking of the colour bar. And in this, every single one of us can play his part.
Wolf Mankiewicz put it very bluntly.
I still disagree with the Labour Party about a lot of things, and I don't support the present leadership. But I believe that the movement, the Labour movement, contains a greater will to peace than any other political movement in this country.
From the TUC, Sir Vincent Tewson.
I'm a trade unionist. I support the Labour Party because historically the Labour Party is the People's Party and draws its support from all sections of the nation.
And here to speak for the radical tradition is Lady Megan Lloyd George.
I've always been a radical, and always shall be. It's, I suppose, bred in the bones. And I'm in the Labour Party because I believe that today it has the driving force to fight for all the things in which I believe.
Bill Connor, better known as Cassandra.
Now, I am going to vote for the Labour Party, not because I agree with the Labour Party, but because the Labour Party agrees with me. I think they are the party of conscience and reform. And I think on major issues, such as the H-bomb, such as the colour bar, and such as capital punishment, they are entirely right. And by gum, I wish they win the next election.
Next week, we shall be introducing you to some more people who are joining us in this great crusade. But now to the Midlands, to Birmingham, where Hugh Gaitskell has just come in from his meeting.
Yes, very good. Was that huge, exciting meeting we've just come from in Birmingham typical of your tour?
Well, it was the largest one that I've addressed, but there were a good many other very enthusiastic ones. In fact, everywhere we've gone, we've had the most terrific welcome. It's exciting. It's, of course, tremendously encouraging, heartwarming.
At that meeting, you agreed that Mr. Butler was right when he said that we could double our standard of living in 25 years.
Well, of course. We've always said that. It's in our capacity to do this, if only we really make the effort.
But how much increase in production do we have to have every year to do that?
Well, that's just a matter of arithmetic. It happens to be 2.8% a year, or nearly 3%.
Well, is that the answer to the famous question that all Labour candidates are being asked, how are you going to pay for it all?
Well, yes, in large part it is. Because, you see, as incomes go up, earnings, wages, salaries, other things, something else goes up as well. The amount of tax revenue coming into the Chancellor of the Exchequer rises automatically. Profits tax, surtax, PAYE, petrol tax, and all the other things as well.
But what exactly has been going wrong?
Well, one thing that's been going wrong is that in these last few years, we just haven't been expanding, and our national income has not been going up properly. We've had about the worst record of any industrial nation, really, in the last 4.5 years.
But if it's common ground that in order to increase or double our standard of living in 25 years, we've got regularly to increase production, why is it then that the Tories say we can't afford all the social reform in the Labour Party programme?
Well, it ought to be common ground, I quite agree, because even under the Tories, the tax revenue went up, about half as fast as it should have done, but it went up somewhat. But I think the answer to your question is really this. The Tories have always been opposed to social reform proposals put forward by, first of all, the Liberal and then the Labour parties. Well, some people remember Lloyd George's first national insurance scheme in 1911. And jumping a few years, I haven't forgotten their opposition to the National Health Service. It was the same story.
At the meeting, you also talked about capital gains.
Yes, I did, because we think that it's time that those who make capital profits, as perhaps it's more accurate to call them, because the value of their shares goes up, and it goes up pretty automatically, taking one year with another, so that they can spend it, and a lot of them do. We think that they should pay their fair share of taxation, and that'll help to relieve taxation on those on whom it falls too hardly at the moment.
But are you really saying that you are absolutely satisfied, as an ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, that we can afford all the things in the Labour Party programme?
Yes, I am, absolutely, and I would not be a party to this programme unless I was sure that we could carry it out. I'm quite certain that given expansion, given dealing with tax avoidance, given things like the capital gains tax, which we want to do, the Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer will not only have ample funds to finance the very moderate and reasonable social reforms we want to carry through, but there'll also be quite a bit left over to relieve taxation where the shoe pinches most.
You'll remember that on Monday, Dick Crossman was here to talk about pensions. Now, many of the postcards and letters that have come in ask the same question. What are you going to do about widows? Chris?
Our manifesto makes special reference to this. A Labour government will review all widows' pensions and pay particular attention to the earnings rule, and will increase to £1 a week the basic pension of the so-called 10 shillings widow. But now we've been asked for more illustrations of Labour's superannuation scheme. So here's another instance, this time of a woman aged 25 who earns £7 a week. Now, under the Tory scheme, she pays 7 and 2pence contribution. Slightly more under the Labour scheme, 7 and 11pence halfpenny. But now look at the difference in pension. The Tory pension, £2.10. The Labour pension, £4, 9 and 2pence. Now, that assumes that her earnings remain the same throughout her working life. But in fact, of course, the national income will go up, and her earnings will go up with it. Now, the Labour scheme makes full allowance for this, and the Tory scheme doesn't. Now, if we assume that her earnings rise only 2% each year, then the Tory pension goes up, but only to £2.16, whereas the Labour pension goes up to £8.14. Now, that's not money for nothing. We have to pay pretty stiff contributions. But whoever you are, you'll get far better value out of the Labour scheme than out of the Tory scheme.
And now from the old to the young. On Wednesday, on television, Mr. Butler made some contemptuous remarks about comprehensive schools. Labour pioneered these schools and is very proud of them.
In Britain, only 1 child in 10 stays at school till they're 17. In Russia and America, the figures will soon be 10 out of 10. And what makes it worse is that in this country, we sort out, at the tender age of 11, the grammar school type from the rest. And the great majority of children leave school at 15. Now, the Tories want to perpetuate this system. Labour says it causes a great waste of potential talent and must be changed. The plan is to develop comprehensive education so as to give far more children an opportunity of advanced education. Even now in our comprehensive schools, there are many girls and boys who have failed to get into a grammar school but are now looking forward to college education. Here are some of them. From left to right, John Hood, Maurice Handley and Alan Brown. They're all 19-year-olds in the upper sixth, and they've just taken advanced level GCE in physics, chemistry and maths. You three, when you leave this school, where are you going to?
Well, I'm going to take a Diploma of Technology course at Birmingham College of Technology.
And Handley?
I hope to go on to college in London to study for a Diploma in Technology.
Well, I've been doing a similar thing, to study Diploma of Technology in Electrical Engineering.
Where do you expect and hope to end up, Brown?
Well, I hope to go into the electrical engineering industry, but I'm not quite sure what branch of it yet.
Have you made up your mind?
I hope to become a desk engineer. That is, an engineer in charge of people rather than an engineer in charge of research or design.
Any ideas, Brown?
Ultimately, I hope to become the head of the foundry.
The boss?
Yes.
Well, now, what strikes me as odd is that you all failed the 11 plus, is that right?
Yes.
Well, how did you do that in view of your record? What do you attribute it to?
I think it must have been nerves and not realising the full significance of the examination.
Do you agree?
Yes.
It was a lucky break for you. You had a comprehensive school around.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I passed in 6 subjects.
What are you specialising in?
Mathematics and physics to advanced level.
And what are you going to do when you leave?
Well, I hope to join the Royal Air Force as an officer cadet in the technical branch.
And what do you want to become, Fred?
I'd like to become a wing commander or something higher.
And you want to invent something, too?
Well, I'd like to invent a rocket to go to the moon.
How many passes did you get at O-level?
I got 8, and then I got another one the year later.
Something of a record, is that, Carol? And you're studying languages?
Yes, at advanced level I'm taking French. I have taken French, English and Latin.
You do Virgil, do you?
Yes, I did some Virgil for my advanced Latin.
Which bits of Virgil do you like best?
The first eclogue, I love it.
Where are you going on from here, Connie?
In October I hope to go to Manchester University.
And in her study, I spoke to the headmistress of a comprehensive school, Miss Foster. And you get in the 6th forms of schools like yours, girls who would have failed the 11 plus.
Yes, I can think of 6 girls who are now in training college. I can think of 2 others who have been accepted for university, 1 for an art college, 2 others leaving us this year to go to training college, and 1 girl doing an intensive post-GCE commercial course.
Mr. West, your comprehensive school gives a whole lot of children advanced education who wouldn't have it otherwise.
Oh, that is perfectly true. At the present time, we have the O-level GCE examination taking place, and we have 146 candidates. Of those, 80 came to us as successful ones, transferred at the age of 11 plus to selected places, and the remainder came to us as non-selected candidates who probably would have gone to a secondary modern school and have finished their career in school at the age of about 15.
And of these remainder, these 64, will any get to your 6th form?
Oh, most certainly some will.
How does your 6th form compare with an average grammar school 6th form?
All the studies are precisely the same. We have art students, we have science students taking various groupings of subjects, and they have the same destinations, the university, the training college, or the higher levels of industry.
What about the brighter boys being held back by being mixed in and so on?
Oh, that's quite nonsense. Quite the contrary is the case. The evidence of the O-level examination, I think, shows that. But in point of fact, I find that even the backward boys are better, and their standard has improved by the stimulus of the brighter ones in the school.
And what do all your parents say about it?
Well, of course, when we started, some of them were dubious or even hostile. Some a little resentful that their boys were coming here. But now that they've seen, in the course of 5 years, what the school can do, they are quite in.
Those boys and girls we saw have got wonderful chances, thanks very largely to these comprehensive schools. If we stick to the old 11 plus idea, as the Tories want us to, we shall be wasting the talents of thousands of British boys and girls. Now, we know our young people are the equal in brains and talent of any in the world. Let's give them more comprehensive schools like this.
I'm sorry there was a bit of trouble with the sound on that film. Now, the first item in our campaign report this evening concerns Lord Hailsham. 10 days ago, he said there would be no mudslinging from his party. Last night in Norfolk, he chose to compare Mr. Hugh Gates